It all started with a promise. When our mom was in her final days, she made me and my sister, Chloe, hold hands. Look after each other, she'd whispered, her voice thin as paper. You're all you've got. I was 22 then, just starting my career in software engineering. Chloe was 19, a freshman in college with stars in her eyes, dreaming of a life filled with beauty, art, and not a single line of code. I took that promise to heart. For the next decade, I was her rock, her financial safety net, and, I thought, her best friend. When Chloe got engaged to Liam, I was thrilled for her. Liam was slick. He was an entrepreneur who seemed to specialize in brand influencing and had a smile that was a little too polished, a little too perfect. He was obsessed with aesthetics, with creating a certain look. Chloe, who had always been impressionable, drank it all in. Suddenly, her life wasn't just for living, it was for curating. They announced their engagement at a family dinner. Our dad, a quiet man who mostly let Chloe have her way to keep the peace, beamed. Chloe flashed her diamond ring, a delicate, expensive-looking thing that Liam probably got in exchange for a few sponsored posts. And we found the most perfect venue, Chloe gushed, her eyes sparkling. It's the Serafina Gardens. It's this exclusive estate just outside the city. It's all glass walls, ancient oak trees, and a reception hall that looks like something out of a fairy tale. But, she trailed off, her face falling dramatically. It's a lot. I knew what that meant. Our dad was comfortably retired but didn't have fairy tale wedding money. Chloe worked part-time at an art gallery, and Liam's income was as unpredictable as his next brand deal. I, on the other hand, had done well for myself. I'd worked hard, saved diligently, and invested wisely. I wasn't flashy, I lived in a modest apartment, drove a sensible car, and my idea of a splurge was a new high-end graphics card, not a designer handbag. How much is a lot? I asked, already knowing where this was going. Liam cleared his throat. The venue alone, for a Saturday in June, is a $50,000 booking fee. That doesn't include catering, flowers, or anything else. A collective gasp went around the small table. My dad looked pale. Chloe looked directly at me, her lower lip trembling just so. It was a look she'd perfected since childhood, the one that always got her what she wanted. It's my dream, Amy. It's the only place I can imagine getting married. I thought of my promise to our mom. I thought of all the years I'd helped Chloe with her rent, her car payments, her student loans. What was one more thing? A big thing, yes, but it was her wedding. A once-in-a-lifetime event. I'll cover it, I said, the words leaving my mouth before I had fully processed them. The room erupted. Chloe shrieked and threw her arms around my neck, sobbing about how I was the best sister in the world. Liam shook my hand firmly, his eyes gleaming with a strange intensity. Amelia, you are a lifesaver. You're making Chloe's dream come true. We are eternally grateful. My dad just looked at me with a mixture of pride and worry. Over the next few weeks, I became the wedding's silent benefactor. Chloe and Liam would go to tastings, meet with planners, and pick out floral arrangements, and the invoices would magically appear in my email inbox. The initial $50,000 for the venue was just the beginning. There was a non-refundable $20,000 deposit for a celebrity-adjacent caterer. A $15,000 contract for a photographer who specialized in ethereal, light-drenched candids. A $10,000 down payment for a florist who was going to construct a living wall of white orchids. Each time, I'd get a call from an ecstatic Chloe. Amy, you won't believe the cake we found. It has 5 tiers and edible gold leaf. Can you handle the deposit? I paid. Every single time. Because I was the contract holder, all the vendors insisted on my signature and my credit card. The venue, the Serafina Gardens, was particularly strict. Their contract was an ironclad, multi-page document that I had to sign in person. The event's manager, a stern woman named Ms. Albright, walked me through it. Ms. Albright, please make my sister, Chloe, and her fiancé, Liam, the main points of contact for all the creative decisions, I instructed. I'm just handling the finances. They're the ones with the vision. Of course, she said, making a note. But please be aware, as the sole name on this agreement, all financial and legal responsibility rests with you. Any and all final decisions, cancellations, or major changes must be authorized by you. We will only communicate with you regarding contractual matters. At the time, it seemed like a mere formality. I signed on the dotted line, feeling a quiet satisfaction. I was doing it. I was fulfilling my promise. I was giving my sister the wedding of her dreams. The total was creeping towards $100,000, but I told myself it was worth it to see her happy. The turning point came about 2 months before the wedding. I was designated maid of honor, a role I took seriously. I planned a bachelorette party, a fun, relaxed weekend at a spa resort. I thought she'd love it. She hated it. A spa, Amy, she said over the phone, her voice dripping with disdain. That's so basic. My friends and I were thinking more along the lines of a weekend in Miami. You know, bottle service, yachts. A real celebration. Chloe, a weekend in Miami for 10 people would cost a fortune, I said, trying to be patient. I've already put a deposit down on the spa. Well, cancel it, she snapped. Liam says a bachelorette party sets the tone for the wedding itself. It needs to have the right vibe. Vibe. That was the word of the month. Everything was about the vibe. The fun on the invitations, the texture of the linens, the specific shade of blush for the bridesmaids' dresses, it all had to contribute to the vibe. A vibe that was starting to feel increasingly exclusive and, frankly, obnoxious. I relented, losing my deposit on the spa and shelling out for the ridiculous Miami trip, which I couldn't even attend because of a major project deadline at work. Chloe seemed more relieved than disappointed that I couldn't make it. The final blow came last Tuesday. I was at my apartment, sorting through some old code, when Chloe called. She sounded weirdly formal. Amy, hi. Do you have a minute to talk? Sure, what's up? Is it another invoice? I joked. There was a stiff silence on the other end. No. It's about the wedding itself. Liam and I have been talking, and, well, we've been trying to finalize the seating chart, and we're trying to make sure the whole day feels cohesive. You know? I have no idea what you're talking about, Chloe. She took a deep breath. We're trying to curate a very specific atmosphere. An aesthetic. The photos, the video, the experience for our guests, it's all about a certain energy. A high-fashion, elegant, and seamless vibe. My stomach started to churn. I knew, with a dreadful certainty, where this was going. And? I prompted, my voice cold. And, well, we love you, obviously. But, you just don't really fit with the vibe we're going for. I was speechless. I literally could not form a word. I just sat there, the phone pressed to my ear, hearing nothing but the blood rushing in my head. Amy? Are you there? You're uninviting me from your wedding? I finally managed to choke out. It's not like that, she said quickly, defensively. It's just, you're so practical. Your style, it's just not, it doesn't mesh. And you'd be in the wedding party, in all the photos. Liam says it's important that everyone in the core group looks the part. It sounds shallow, I know, but this day is about our vision. My style. She meant my preference for comfortable jeans over designer dresses, my simple, no makeup look, my hair that I usually just tied back in a ponytail. I wasn't an accessory for her perfect day. I was a person. Her sister. The person paying for the entire damn thing. Chloe, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. I have paid for every single part of this vision. The venue. The food. The flowers. My name is on every contract. I have poured nearly 6 figures into your vibe. And we are so grateful for that, she said, her voice bright and phony. It's the most generous gift ever. We'll be sure to give you a special thank you in the wedding program. Think of it as your contribution to our beautiful day. You're helping create it, just from behind the scenes. Behind the scenes. Like a stagehand. Like an ATM. I felt something inside me break. The promise I made to my mom, the years of love and support, the blind generosity, it all curdled into a cold, hard knot in my chest. So you want my money, but you don't want me, I stated. It wasn't a question. Don't be so dramatic, Amy, she sighed, as if I were a child throwing a tantrum. It's just one day. We'll celebrate with you properly afterward. We can have a nice, quiet dinner, just us. It will be much more your speed anyway. My speed. I see, I said. The knot in my chest wasn't just anger anymore. It was something else. It was clarity. Thank you for letting me know, Chloe. I have to go now. I hung up before she could reply. I sat in my silent apartment, the city lights twinkling outside my window. For a moment, I just stared into space. Then, I stood up, walked over to my filing cabinet, and pulled out a thick folder. It was labeled Chloe's Wedding. Inside, nestled amongst the dozens of invoices and receipts, was the master contract for the Serafina Gardens. I smoothed it out on my desk and read the fine print again, my eyes scanning for one particular clause. And there it was. Clear as day. Any and all final decisions, cancellations, or major changes must be authorized by you, the contract holder. A slow, cold smile spread across my face. Chloe wanted a wedding with a specific vibe. She wanted it to be seamless and perfect. And she wanted me behind the scenes. Fine, I thought. Let's see how the show runs when the producer pulls the plug. The 24 hours after that phone call were a blur of incandescent rage followed by a profound, hollow numbness. I didn't sleep. I paced my apartment, replaying the conversation in my head, each word a fresh stab. You don't fit the vibe. Behind the scenes. Much more your speed. It was the sheer audacity, the casual cruelty of it, that staggered me. This wasn't just an insult, it was a fundamental rejection of who I was, delivered by the one person I thought I could always count on. My first instinct was to call her back and unleash a torrent of fury. To scream, to cry, to demand she recognize the absurdity of her request. I wanted to list every single dollar I had spent, every sacrifice I had made. But what would that accomplish? She'd call me dramatic. She'd twist my words, paint me as the crazy, jealous older sister, and Liam would be right there, whispering affirmations in her ear. They had already cast me in this role. Arguing would just be playing my part. So I did nothing. I didn't call her. I didn't text. I didn't answer when her name flashed on my screen later that evening, likely a follow-up call to make sure we were okay. I let it go to voicemail. The message was sickeningly sweet. Hey, Ames. Just wanted to check in. I know that was a tough conversation, but I'm so glad we could be honest with each other. It's so important for the wedding to be perfect, and I really appreciate you understanding. Love you. Understanding. The word was a lit match on a trail of gasoline. She didn't want understanding. She wanted compliance. She wanted my money in my absence, and she'd wrapped it in the pretty paper of honesty. The next day, the other shoe dropped, my dad called. Amy, honey. I just spoke to Chloe. His voice was gentle, but I could hear the familiar tone of appeasement he always used when Chloe was involved. She told me about your conversation. She feels just terrible about how it all came out. Does she? I asked, my voice flat. She does. But, honey, you have to try and see it from her perspective. This wedding, it's become this huge thing. Liam's very particular. And for Chloe, it's like her own little production. She just wants everything to be perfect. And I'm an imperfection, I stated, a cold fact. No, not at all, he said quickly. It's just, you know Chloe. She gets these ideas in her head. She doesn't mean to be hurtful. Maybe you could just let this one go? For her? Don't make a big scene. It's her special day. Don't make a scene. The family motto. For years, I had been the one to smooth things over, to absorb Chloe's whims and tantrums to keep the peace. I was the stable, reliable one, which, I was now realizing, was family code for the one whose feelings don't matter as much. My dad wasn't defending Chloe, he was managing me. He was asking me to swallow my pride, my hurt, my dignity, so that Chloe's fairy tale could proceed without a hitch. "Dad," I said, and the coldness in my own voice surprised me. "I have given Chloe over $100,000 for this production. I have worked for years to earn that money. I paid for it out of love and a sense of duty to Mom's memory. And in return, I have been told I am not good enough to attend. I am not an embarrassment to be hidden. I am not a scene to be avoided. I am her sister." He was silent for a long moment. "I know, honey. It's not right. But what are you going to do? The money's already spent. All you can do now is either be the bigger person or cause a rift in the family that might never heal. Be the bigger person." The ultimate emotional blackmail. It meant letting her win. It meant accepting my place as the family ATM, to be used and then discarded when I no longer fit the aesthetic. "I have to go, Dad," I said, and hung up. That was the moment the last shred of doubt vanished. My family wasn't going to stand up for me. They were going to ask me to lay down and be a doormat, just as they always had. They had made their choice. Now I had to make mine. I went back to the folder. Back to the contract for the Serafina Gardens. I read it again, this time not with anger, but with the detached focus I used when debugging a complex piece of code. I was looking for loopholes, for liabilities, for power. And it was all there, in black and white, legally binding. My signature was at the bottom of every page. My name was the only one listed under client. My contact information was the only one listed for billing and legal correspondence. I had the power to change the catering order. I had the power to change the floral arrangements. I had the power to change the date. And, most importantly, I had the power to cancel the entire event. The contract was clear about the cancellation policy. Cancellation more than 30 days out meant forfeiting the 50% deposit. We were inside that 30-day window. Cancellation now meant forfeiting the entire $50,000 booking fee. It was a staggering amount of money to lose. A part of me, the practical, frugal software engineer, screamed in protest at the thought of throwing away $50,000. But then I thought about the other $50,000 plus I had spent. The caterer, the photographer, the band, the florist. I pulled out their contracts too. They all had similar clauses, but with a crucial difference. Their final balances were due 2 weeks before the event. If the balances weren't paid, the contracts were void. And who did they send the invoices for the final balance to? Me. A plan began to form. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclamation. I wasn't just going to burn it all down, I was going to do it logically, legally, and with the full power of the contracts they had so eagerly pushed in front of me. For the next week, I practiced the art of the gray rock. When Chloe sent cheerful, oblivious texts with photos of her final dress fitting, "Doesn't it look like a dream, Ames?" I replied with a single, non-committal "looks nice." When my dad called to check on my mood, I was polite but distant. "I'm fine, Dad. Just busy with work." They mistook my silence for submission. They thought I was being the bigger person. They thought I had accepted my role backstage. In their minds, the problem was solved. Chloe could have her perfect, Amy-free wedding, and I had been successfully managed. The relief in their tone was palpable. Meanwhile, I was busy. I spent hours on the phone. Not with Chloe or my dad, but with my credit card companies. I informed them of potential upcoming chargebacks, explaining the situation in calm, factual terms, services paid for but from which I was now contractually barred from attending by the recipient of the gift. The agents were surprisingly sympathetic, noting the accounts and advising me on the correct procedures. Then, I waited. I knew the final payment invoices were due to be sent out any day now. Chloe and Liam were blissfully unaware, too busy posting filtered photos of themselves captioned #wedding goals and #almost Mr. and Mrs. The first email arrived on a Monday morning, exactly 15 days before the wedding. It was from the caterer. Final invoice for Chloe and Liam's wedding. Balance of $22,500 due by Friday to confirm services. I let it sit in my inbox. The next day, an email from the florist. Final payment reminder. Balance of $7,800 due to secure floral delivery. I let that one sit, too. One by one, they trickled in. The band. The photographer. The lighting specialist. My inbox became a graveyard of final demands. The first panicked message came from Chloe on Friday afternoon. Chloe, hey, Amy, weird question. Celeste from Petals and Prose, the florist, just texted me asking about the final payment. Did you get an invoice? She said it's overdue and they might have to release our orchids to another event if it's not paid by end of day. I looked at the text. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. I was a developer about to deploy a critical patch. I took a deep breath and typed my reply. Me, oh, weird. I haven't seen anything. I'll check my spam folder. I let an hour pass. The frantic texts started piling up. Chloe, Amy, please check. She's serious. Chloe, the caterer just called Liam too. He said the payment is overdue. What's going on? Did you forget? Chloe, Amy, answer me. This isn't funny. I waited until I knew their offices would be closed for the weekend. Then, I finally replied. Me, so sorry, crazy day at work. Just checked. The invoices all went to a weird subfolder. Looks like they're all overdue. That's a shame. Well, have a good weekend. The 3 dots indicating she was typing appeared and disappeared for a full 5 minutes. I could practically feel her rage vibrating through the phone. She finally called, screaming. I let it go to voicemail. I knew this was only the beginning. The small vendors were just the appetizers. The main course was the Serafina Gardens. Their final payment wasn't due until the week of the wedding. But their contract gave me all the power I needed. I opened my email and composed a new message. To m.albright@seraphinagardens.com. Subject, urgent query event contract #774B Chloe, last name, and Liam, last name. Dear Ms. Albright. I am writing in my capacity as the sole contract holder for the above-mentioned event. I need to schedule a call with you at your earliest convenience to discuss a potential, significant change to the event status. Regards. Amelia, last name. I hit send. As I did, I felt a strange sense of calm. Chloe and Liam had built their perfect, curated world on a foundation of my money and my signature. They just never bothered to read the fine print. They were about to learn that a vibe is an opinion, but a contract is a fact. And I held all the facts. The weekend was an exercise in strategic silence. My phone was a constant buzzing hive of panicked texts and missed calls from Chloe, Liam, and my dad. I put it on silent and placed it face down on my counter. Every so often, I'd glance at the screen. The messages escalated from frantic to furious to pleading. Chloe, you're doing this on purpose. You're trying to ruin my wedding because you're jealous. Liam, Amelia, this is incredibly immature. You are costing us thousands of dollars and causing Chloe immense distress. Call me back immediately so we can resolve this like adults. Dad, Amy, please. Whatever you're angry about, we can talk it through. Don't do this to your sister. Just pay the vendors. They thought this was about the smaller vendors. They thought the worst that could happen was losing the celebrity caterer in the orchid wall. They had no idea this was just the prelude. The real performance was yet to come. They were scrambling to fix the set dressing while I was preparing to bring the whole theater down. On Monday morning, I received a reply from Ms. Albright. To Amelia, last name. From m.albright@seraphinagardens.com. Subject, urgent query event contract #774B. Dear Ms., last name. Thank you for your email. I am available to speak this morning at 10 a.m. Please let me know if that time is suitable. Regards. Margaret Albright. Events Director, the Seraphina Gardens. I confirm the time. For the next hour, I sat at my kitchen table, the contract spread out before me, a cup of coffee growing cold at my elbow. I wasn't nervous. I felt a weird, detached sense of purpose. This wasn't an emotional decision anymore, it was a business transaction. A termination of a contract based on a breach of an unwritten, but far more important, agreement, family, love, and respect. At exactly 10 a.m., my phone rang. It was an unlisted number. Amelia, last name, speaking. Ms., last name, this is Margaret Albright from the Seraphina Gardens. Thank you for calling back so promptly. You mentioned a significant change to the event scheduled for this coming Saturday. Yes, Ms. Albright. I did, I said, my voice even and professional. I need to inform you that I am canceling the event. There was a moment of complete silence on the other end of the line. I could hear the faint sound of a keyboard clacking, then stopping abruptly. Canceling, she finally said, her voice laced with surprise. Ms., last name, the wedding is in 5 days. As per your contract, cancellation at this stage, it results in the forfeiture of the entire $50,000 venue fee. I am aware of that, Ms. Albright. I've reviewed the contract thoroughly. I accept the financial penalty. Please proceed with the cancellation of event #774B. Another pause. This was clearly not a call she was used to receiving. May I ask why? She asked, a hint of curiosity in her professional tone. Is there an issue with the couple? You could say that, I said wryly. The short version is that I am the sole financier of this wedding, and the bride, my sister, has made it clear that I am not welcome to attend. The silence this time was longer, heavier. When she spoke again, her voice had lost its corporate stiffness and gained a sliver of what sounded like human sympathy. Oh. I see. Well, that is highly unusual. Indeed, I said. So, to be clear, the event is cancelled. The musical acts, the lighting technicians, any third-party vendors booked through you, all of it is to be stood down. The Seraphina Gardens is not to be open for Chloe or Liam or any of their guests on Saturday. I understand, she said, her voice now all business again. We have, of course, received several frantic calls from a Mr. Liam, last name, and a Ms. Chloe, last name, this morning regarding their other vendors. They seem to believe they can still host the reception at our venue even if their caterer has pulled out. They are mistaken, I said. They are not party to this contract. They have no authority here. That is correct. We have informed them of that repeatedly, which seems to have only confused and angered them. They do not seem to grasp the nature of a binding agreement. They are about to get a crash course in it, I said, a grim satisfaction in my words. Very well, Ms., last name. I will process the cancellation immediately. A formal confirmation will be emailed to you this afternoon. I must say, in my 15 years as events director here, this is a first. I'm sorry for your situation. Thank you, Ms. Albright. You've been very professional, I said, and ended the call. I leaned back in my chair and let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. It was done. The domino had been pushed. All I had to do now was wait for it to fall. For the next few days, I was bombarded with increasingly unhinged voicemails. Chloe's went from screaming to crying to pathetic, whimpering pleas. Liam's were all blustering threats of legal action. You can't do this. We have a verbal agreement. We'll sue you for emotional distress and financial damages. I almost laughed. Sue me with what money? The money I was no longer giving them? My dad tried a different tactic, Guilt. Your mother would be so ashamed of you, Amelia. Tearing the family apart over something so petty. Your sister is a wreck. She hasn't stopped crying for 2 days. She's going to lose everything because of your pride. Is that what you want? Is that what I want? I thought. No. I wanted a sister who loved me. I wanted a family that respected me. But since I couldn't have that, I would settle for self-respect. I would settle for no longer being the bank account they could all draw from while simultaneously looking down on me. I decided I needed to get out of my apartment. I booked a last-minute flight to a quiet coastal town a few states away. I packed a bag, turned my phone off completely, and left. I needed to be somewhere they couldn't reach me, somewhere I could breathe. The day before the wedding, what should have been the rehearsal dinner, I was sitting on a balcony overlooking the ocean, a glass of wine in my hand. I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. The tens of thousands of dollars I had lost felt less like a loss and more like the cost of my own liberation. It was the most expensive, but most valuable, lesson I had ever learned. I knew that back home, the final act of the drama was unfolding. Chloe and Liam must have been in a state of utter panic. They had likely spent the week trying to salvage their perfect day. Maybe they'd found a new, last-minute caterer. Maybe they'd begged the florist to take a credit card they couldn't afford. But none of that mattered without the venue. The crown jewel of their entire vibe. They probably assumed I was bluffing, or that they could show up and somehow charm or bully their way into the building. They would be thinking, she can't really have canceled it. It's the Serafina Gardens. People book that years in advance. She wouldn't throw that kind of money away. They still didn't get it. They thought my currency was money. They didn't understand that my pride, my dignity, was worth far more. I pictured them getting ready for their rehearsal. Chloe in a stylish white dress, Liam in a crisp linen suit. They'd be trying to project an aura of calm control for their wedding party, all while frantically calling the venue, leaving voicemails that would go unanswered. They'd tell their friends, "Oh, just a little administrative mix-up. Amelia's handling it. You know how she is, always so dramatic." They would arrive at the Serafina Gardens for their rehearsal, expecting to find the staff ready to welcome them. They would walk up the long, winding driveway, past the ancient oak trees they had so admired. They would approach the grand entrance with its gleaming glass doors. And they would find them locked. They would see no lights on inside. No staff. No tables set for their rehearsal dinner. Just a small, elegant sign on the door. It would probably read, "Closed for a private event." The irony would be lost on them. This was my private event. A celebration of my own independence, held in absentia. I took a sip of my wine, the salty air cool on my skin. Tomorrow was Saturday. The day of the wedding that wasn't. The day my sister's perfectly curated world would publicly and spectacularly implode. And the best part? I didn't have to do another thing. I had already set the pieces in motion. All they had to do was walk into the checkmate I had prepared for them. The smile probably hadn't vanished from her face yet. But it would. Oh, it would. And when it did, she'd finally realize the truth. The vibe she cared so much about? It was entirely dependent on the one person she had decided didn't fit. This update is based on what I pieced together later from my dad, once he was speaking to me again, and one of Chloe's bridesmaids, who apparently felt a pang of conscience and sent me a novel-length text message detailing the glorious implosion. Saturday morning. The day of the wedding. Chloe woke up in the bridal suite of a 5-star hotel, a room I had, of course, paid for. According to the bridesmaid, she was in a state of weaponized denial. The past week had been a nightmare of canceled vendors and unanswered calls, but she and Liam had constructed a narrative they were sticking to. Amy was having a massive, childish tantrum. She had messed with the smaller vendors to scare them, but there was no way she would have canceled the venue. That was the one thing they were sure of. It was too expensive, too final. They believed I would show up at the last minute, apology in hand, having made my point. They had managed to hire a local restaurant to cater at the last minute. A frantic, tearful call to our dad secured the funds, and had convinced a grocery store floral department to whip up some bouquets. It was a far cry from their orchid wall and celebrity chef, but they could spin it. They could tell their guests it was a deliberate choice to support local businesses. The vibe could be salvaged. Chloe spent the morning getting her hair and makeup done, sipping champagne with her bridesmaids. She was posting on Instagram, of course. A picture of her perfectly manicured hand holding a champagne flute, captioned, "The big day is finally here. Can't wait to marry my soulmate at Liam the brand." She was the picture of a serene, happy bride. But the bridesmaid told me that every time her phone buzzed, she would jump, a flicker of panic in her eyes before she smoothed it over with a brittle smile. The plan was for the bridal party to head to the Serafina Gardens at 2 p.m. for photos before the 4 p.m. ceremony. Liam and his groomsmen were on a similar schedule. At 1:45 p.m., Chloe stood in front of the mirror, resplendent in her ridiculously expensive gown. She looked, by all accounts, stunning. A perfect bride for a perfect wedding. "Okay, everyone, let's go," she announced, clapping her hands. "Our chariot awaits." The limousine, prepaid by me, naturally, pulled up to the hotel. The girls piled in, buzzing with excitement. The mood was high. They were on their way. The drive to the Serafina Gardens takes about 30 minutes from the city. As they got closer, Chloe started making calls. "Liam, honey, are you there yet?" she chirped into her phone. "We're about 5 minutes out. Make sure you tell the photographer to get a shot of me getting out of the limo." There was a pause. The bridesmaid, sitting opposite Chloe, could hear Liam's tinny, anxious voice on the other end. "What do you mean, there's a problem?" Chloe's smile faltered. "What problem? Is the gate stuck? Just have one of the groomsmen give it a push." Her face grew tighter as Liam kept talking. "What do you mean a security guard won't let you in? Tell him who you are. It's our wedding." "Liam? Liam, what's going on?" The limo turned onto the long, private road leading to the estate. Up ahead, they could see it. The grand, wrought iron gates of the Serafina Gardens. And in front of them, Liam's limo was parked awkwardly, with Liam and his groomsmen standing on the road, arguing with a uniformed security guard. As Chloe's limo pulled up behind them, the scene was clear. The gates were shut and chained, with a large, prominent private property "No trespassing" sign hanging from the lock. Chloe practically fell out of the limo, her massive dress getting caught on the door. "What is the meaning of this?" she shrieked at the guard, who looked utterly unimpressed. "We have a wedding here today. Open these gates right now." The guard, a burly man who looked like he'd seen it all, just shook his head. "Sorry, ma'am. The property is closed for the day. I have a list of approved personnel. Your name is not on it." "I am the bride," she screamed, her voice cracking. "My name is Chloe. Chloe and Liam's wedding." The guard consulted his clipboard with painstaking slowness. "Nope. No Chloe on the list. No Liam. No wedding, for that matter. My instructions are clear. No one gets on the property today." Liam, looking pale and sweaty in his tuxedo, tried to reason with him. "Look, there must be a mistake. Our wedding planner, our coordinator from the venue." "There's no coordinator here today, sir," the guard said flatly. "The entire staff was given the day off. The property is closed." The reality of the situation began to crash down on them like a tidal wave. The bridesmaids were murmuring amongst themselves. The groomsmen were looking at their shoes. The photographer stood by, awkwardly holding his camera. This wasn't a mix-up. This wasn't a tantrum. This was a cancellation. Chloe's perfectly made-up face began to crumble. Her eyes, wide with disbelief, scanned the scene. The locked gates. The stone-faced guard. The silent, empty estate beyond. The smile didn't just vanish from her face, it was ripped away, replaced by a mask of dawning, abject horror. And then, she realized. She realized that every conversation she'd had with Ms. Albright, the event's director, had been redirected. Every email she had sent had been replied to with a polite but firm, "Please have the contract holder contact us directly." She realized why her frantic calls for the past week had gone to an unmonitored voicemail box. She realized that her name meant nothing. Liam's name meant nothing. Their vision and their vibe were just words. The only thing that mattered was the name on the contract. The one name the security guard would have on his list. The one person who could have called and had these gates opened. My name. Her head whipped around, her eyes wild. She fumbled for her phone, her hands shaking so violently she could barely unlock it. She scrolled to my contact and hit the call button. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, I was walking along a beach. My phone, which I had finally turned back on, buzzed in my pocket. I saw her name and let it ring. And ring. And ring. It went to voicemail. A second later, she called again. This time, I answered. I didn't say anything. I just held the phone to my ear and listened. On the other end, there was chaos. I could hear her ragged, hysterical breathing. I could hear the wind, the distant sound of traffic. I could hear one of her bridesmaids whispering, "Oh my God, Chloe, what do we do?" "Amy," she finally sobbed into the phone. Her voice was a raw, broken thing. "Amy, you have to call them. Please. Call the venue. Tell them to open the gates. The guests will be here in an hour. Please, Amy. Please." I remained silent. I let her please hang in the air. "Why?" she whispered, the fight draining out of her. "Why would you do this?" And then I spoke. My voice was calm, clear, and completely devoid of emotion. "You told me I didn't fit the vibe of your wedding, Chloe. You said you didn't want me there. I didn't mean it." I was stressed. "Liam." "You were very clear," I interrupted, my voice like ice. "You wanted me behind the scenes. So I took myself fully behind the scenes. I removed myself from the equation. The problem is, my name and my money was the entire equation." A choked, guttural sound came from her end of the phone. The sound of a person's world collapsing in on itself. But the money," she stammered. "You paid for it. You lost all that money." "Yes, I did," I said calmly. $50,000. I decided it was a small price to pay to buy back my dignity from a sister who thought it was for sale. "You wanted a perfect wedding without me in it. By canceling the venue, I gave you exactly what you asked for, a day that is completely and totally, 100%, about you. Your actions. Your choices." I could hear Liam grab the phone from her. "Amelia, you listen to me, you psychopathic bee." I hung up. I blocked his number. I blocked her number. I blocked my dad's number. I stood on the beach and looked out at the ocean. The sun was warm on my face. A few hundred guests were about to descend on a locked gate in their formal wear. A bride and groom were standing on the side of a road, their fairy tale in ruins. They had built their castle in the air, on a foundation of my love and my labor. They just forgot that I was the one who controlled the ground it was built on. And I had just opened up a sinkhole right underneath it. The smile was gone. And in its place was the cold, hard, and very public realization of what she had done. The aftermath was exactly as catastrophic as you'd imagine. The story of the cancelled at the gates wedding spread like wildfire among their social circle. The carefully curated image of #couple goals was instantly and irrevocably shattered, replaced by the humiliating reality of a bride in a couture gown crying on the side of a highway. My dad, after a week of my blocking him, finally got through to me by emailing me with the subject line, "I am sorry." It was a long, rambling message, but the gist was this: he had seen Chloe's true colors that day. Seeing her not express a single ounce of remorse, but instead screaming about how I had ruined her life and her brand, was a wake-up call for him. He admitted he had spent years enabling her, asking me to be the peacekeeper when he should have been the parent. He apologized for not defending me, and he asked, humbly, if I would be willing to talk to him when I was ready. It was the most honest thing he'd said to me in 20 years. I didn't reply immediately, but I unblocked his number. Chloe and Liam's relationship, which was built on the shaky foundation of aesthetics and public perception, crumbled under the weight of actual adversity. Liam, the branding expert, couldn't handle the bad press. He blamed Chloe for antagonizing me, for being so stupid as to uninvite the person funding their entire lifestyle. Chloe blamed him for pushing the vibe narrative, for making her feel like her own sister was an embarrassment. According to the bridesmaid who had become my unofficial correspondent, they had a spectacular, screaming argument right there on the side of the road in front of their entire wedding party. They broke up less than a month later. Liam has since rebranded himself as a life coach specializing in overcoming adversity, which is a level of shamelessness I can only admire from a distance. Chloe had a complete breakdown. She had to move out of the trendy apartment she shared with Liam and, with no money and no job that could support her, she had to do the one thing her pride would never have allowed: she had to move back in with our dad. She deactivated her Instagram account and, for the first time in her adult life, was forced to live a life that wasn't being performed for an audience. About 2 weeks after the wedding that wasn't, I returned home. My quiet apartment felt like a sanctuary. I started the process of damage control and reclamation. I called my credit card companies and initiated the chargebacks on the caterer, florist, band, etc., who had all canceled due to non-payment of the final balance. Because I had documented everything, I won every single dispute. Over $60,000 was refunded directly to my accounts. Losing the $50,000 deposit for the venue still stung, but I had accepted it as the price of my freedom. Then, about a month after the cancellation, I received a thick envelope in the mail. It was from a law firm. My heart sank. Was Liam actually trying to sue me? But the letterhead wasn't from a litigation firm. It was from the corporate attorneys representing the Serafina Gardens. My hands trembled slightly as I opened it. Inside was a long, formal letter. It detailed our contract, the date of cancellation, and the clause regarding the non-refundable deposit. And then it said this: however, given the highly unusual and unfortunate circumstances surrounding your cancellation, which were relayed to our board by events director Margaret Albright, a discretionary review was conducted. It is not the policy of the Serafina Gardens to be party to what is clearly a case of profound familial and financial exploitation. While our contract is ironclad, our board has invoked a rare moral turpitude clause, typically reserved for events canceled due to criminal activity or public scandal on the part of the booking party. My eyes widened. I kept reading. The board has determined that the actions of the intended beneficiaries of the event, Ms. Chloe, last name, and Mr. Liam, last name, brought the booking into disrepute. Furthermore, your full cooperation and candidness with Ms. Albright has been noted. We have a reputation to maintain, and profiting from such a distressing situation is not in line with our brand values. Therefore, we have decided to issue a full and complete refund of your $50,000 deposit. Enclosed was a check. A check for $50,000. I just sat there, in my quiet apartment, staring at it. I started to laugh. A real, deep, gut-wrenching laugh. It was the most absurd, most validating, most wonderfully ironic plot twist I could have ever imagined. Chloe and Liam were so obsessed with their brand and their vibe that they had inadvertently offended the brand of the one company that held all the cards. My honesty had been more valuable than their lies. My quiet dignity had outmaneuvered their loud and proud vanity. So, what did I do with the money? All of it, the nearly $110,000 that was now sitting back in my bank account? First, I paid off the last of my student loans. It was a boring, practical thing to do, and it felt deliciously, wonderfully me. Second, I took that money and put a massive down payment on a house of my own, a beautiful little craftsman with a garden, something I had always wanted but never thought I could afford so soon. It was the ultimate behind-the-scenes move, investing in my own long-term happiness instead of my sister's fleeting one. Third, I booked a 2-week trip to Japan, a place I had always dreamed of going. No spas, No bottle service. Just me, a rail pass, ancient temples, and incredible food. And finally, in memory of my mom and the promise I made to her, I made a substantial donation to the hospice that took care of her in her final days. I decided that looking after each other didn't have to mean enabling toxic behavior. It could mean honoring her memory by being a good person in the world, and by respecting myself enough to walk away from those who don't respect me. I have started speaking to my dad again. Our relationship is fragile, but it's more honest than it has ever been. He came over to my new house and helped me plant a rose bush in the garden. As for Chloe, I received a handwritten letter from her about 6 months after the wedding disaster. It was rambling, tear-stained, and full of self-pity, but buried in it were 2 words I never thought I'd hear from her: "I'm sorry." She told me she was in therapy. She said that losing everything had forced her to see what a monster she had become. She didn't ask for forgiveness or for money. She just said she hoped that one day, I might be able to think of her as a sister again. I haven't written back yet. Maybe I will someday. But for now, my forgiveness is my own. My peace is my own. And my vibe? It's thriving. I'm sitting on the porch of my own house, a house I bought with the money from the wedding I wasn't invited to, and I'm finally, truly, happy. And that's a vibe no one can take away from me.